Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another great episode of the Van Buren Variety Show. I am Bob Van Buren, your host. Very, very glad you're here. Hope you've been having a great week so far. Me too. I've just been working very hard. I think like we all do, trying to make a living, trying to, fight the traffic. So, pretty much a week that everybody else has, I think. And if you're retired, I envy you. So, but enjoy that for sure, as I'm sure that you've earned it. Tonight, we have a very serious topic, and it's a topic that I believe touches everybody. If there was never anything in your life that's caused you hardship, caused you any kind of mental strain, I'd like to know your secret on that, because everybody has something from their past that either they'd rather forget, either it was their mistake or somebody else caused them pain. So here's the question I want to pose to you tonight that are watching this show. When you see this particular word that I'm going to display, what do you think of the most? What comes to mind? Here's the word. Does that word scare you? What do you think of when you see that? When I first looked at this word, my first thought was physical trauma. We've heard about trauma in a hospital, someone who's in really dire need, in the physical form, whether it's a heart attack, whether they were in an accident. I mean, there's physical trauma for sure. But I want to talk to you tonight about another type of trauma that is just as damaging, if not more. There is the mental trauma, something from your past or something from a person's past, whether that be a mentally abusive childhood, could be a bitter divorce, something that's very traumatic that you've had to deal with. And sometimes it's very, 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 very ugly what you've had to deal with in your life. So how do you get through it? That's the struggle that even I've had to deal with on a few occasions. When you've had something that's so traumatic in your life and you just can't seem to get over it. Maybe it's been days, weeks, months, even years, but your brain will be like an old VCR tape. You replay it, and you replay it and you replay it. So how do you get past the pain where it does not rob you of your present happiness? That's what we're going to talk about tonight. And I hope that everybody can learn something from this. I certainly will. And this will bring me to my next guest. This is Sandra Coos. She is also a coach that she's going to talk to you about getting past the drama, finding your happiness, and just helping you along where it doesn't hurt, getting past the pain, I guess you could say. She has better words than I do, so for sure. She has also written a very, very interesting book that I can't wait to read myself. It's called Journey to Yourself, How to Heal from Trauma. And if you look at the very bottom, that's very intriguing to me, written by someone who did. So that is, personal experience, obviously, is one that can empathize with your predicament. So hopefully tonight we can talk to her and maybe she can give you some pointers and just make us all feel like, how can we not be robbed of our happiness because of something somebody did or something that happened to you in your past? So without further ado, let me bring my guest on tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Sandra Coos. She's going to be talking to us about trauma healing in particular, among some other subjects. Sandra, welcome to the Van Buren Variety Show.
Hi, Bob. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's kind of talk about the word itself. A lot of people don't like that word. It's a very discomforting word to talk about it, but you have to talk about it because too many people go through it. So what would you say your definition of trauma is?
Well, I find that trauma, the word itself, is extremely misunderstood. It's because when we think about trauma, we think about what happened. We think about the story.
Mm-hmm.
But the story is not what trauma is. The story is just what happened. What trauma is basically a defense mechanism. Because when we were traumatized, the first thing that happened was that we lost our sense of being in control.
Mm-hmm.
We had the rug pulled out from underneath us because we didn't see it coming. And so it's really a defense mechanism. Trauma, in essence, is just a string of triggers And a trigger is like the warning system from the body. When we're being triggered, we're being catapulted back into a situation where we were traumatized or something happened that changed our worldview in a negative
Mm-hmm.
way. And so when we're being triggered and all those emotions rush to the surface, the body is basically saying, wait a minute, stop. It felt like this before. We were powerless in that situation. Never again. That's why we explode. That's why the emotions are so high. That's
Absolutely.
basically
Mm-hmm.
PTSD. We're getting catapulted back into the incident that happened, and we feel it all over again. But at the same time, we're trying to protect ourselves so bad, and we can't because we still feel powerless since we haven't healed from that situation.
Absolutely. And for me personally, and probably a lot of people too, maybe you've seen it in your experience where we play the coulda, shoulda, woulda game. If I had said this at the right time, if I had only did this, or had I not done that, that wouldn't happen. So you play out all these scenarios, what coulda, shoulda, but if didn't happen. Do you see that a lot? People saying coulda, shoulda, woulda.
Well, I'm guilty of that.
Yeah.
Not as much anymore, but yes, I definitely used to. It is common because when we just focus on the story, we focus on how we can make it unhappen. But we
Yes.
can't.
Mhm.
We can't go back into the past and change it. And so we play this blame game because when it comes to trauma, it doesn't make any sense to us because it happened against our will. We had no choice in the matter, no matter what happened, if it was sexual assault or it was a car accident. In essence, trauma is trauma. So, however we deal with it after it happened is the same way. It's just a different story. And so
Absolutely.
we try to make it unhappen but we can't time travel. We haven't figured this one out yet.
No, you're right.
So
Wish we
it's
could.
yeah, I guess. Depends. But so rather than trying to move past it and release it, we try and fix it. But there is nothing to fix because it already happened and it cannot be changed. And
Absolutely.
that's this shoulda, woulda, coulda game.
Yep. And that's yours truly is guilty of that.
Yes.
But I'm interested in this. In your book, you talked about journey to yourself, how to heal from trauma. At the very bottom, you wrote written by someone who did.
Hmm.
Uh, so can you go into kind of the trauma that you yourself have experienced if you want to?
Sure. Not a problem at all. I mean, I wrote about it, so
Okay.
it would be weird if I couldn't talk about it, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, my trauma was really happening over the span of a good 10 years. So when I
Oh
was
wow.
12, I was molested. When I
Oh
was
no.
14, I was sexually harassed. When I was 19 to 25, I was sexually assaulted multiple times.
Oh no.
I was sexually harassed in a workplace at 21. I was bullied in school from 16 to 17 from two classes, not just a couple of kids, but two full classes.
Hmm.
And when I was 22, I was raped.
Oh no. Oh
And
wow. Mm.
I'm not finished.
Okay.
To top things off, when I went to see a psychologist to help me get through this because I didn't like the person I had become after all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And after the very first session we had, he dismissed me with the words that he believed that I already worked through it all and what he was supposed to do. And to be honest, I think this was really the point where everything came crashing down because there was no help for me. Out of all what I've experienced, I think this was the hardest part, being
Oh
dismissed.
wow. Mm. So I mean, I would call you just not a survivor. I guess I could use the word.
Yeah, I think I'm past this point.
Okay.
The thing is, there's three stages in trauma healing.
Okay.
First, it's the victim stage when you're still in it and you are still paralyzed from the trauma. Then, as you start to process and release a bit, you become the survivor. So you're not the victim anymore; you survived it.
After the victim stage.
Yes,
Okay. Gotcha. All
exactly. And
right.
then comes the thriver stage, which means when the trauma is not holding you hostage any longer.
Okay.
And I guess that category is where I fit in, even though I have no trauma left. So I don't even consider myself traumatized in any way.
Wow. And you're healed. I mean, I mean, of all the things that you've gone through, it makes my problem seem, that really minuscule, So,
Well, don't do this. It doesn't matter if trauma is big or small, trauma is trauma. And we may think that another person's trauma is so much worse than ours, but don't put yourself down. Don't make yourself smaller. Don't make your issues smaller. Your
mhm,
trauma that you went through is just as valid as mine. It's a different story, but it doesn't mean it was any less traumatic. So
sure.
don't brush it under the rug. No one should ever do that.
What are some the cases that you've seen? I mean, being a coach from other people, um, just a generic, and saying that, okay, what kind of trauma have you seen, you know, more common? Are they more childhood trauma, more adult trauma? I mean, what are you seeing more right now?
Well, since my trauma is mostly sexual,
Hmm.
those people who had similar traumas feel more connected with me because they know that I understand. For
Absolutely.
example, I was lucky enough never to have been in an abusive relationship. I was lucky in this point, or
That's
I was
good.
lucky that I had good parents,
Good.
a good family, a loving family. So, yes, I help people with these issues, of course, but I can more relate to being a victim of rape, of sexual assault, of bullying,
Sure.
because I've been through that. So, this
Sure.
is more the cases that I find, that people that come to me, not that I find.
Mm. That's great. Well, so based on the experiences you've had in your life, is that what encouraged you, I guess you could say, to become a coach yourself to help other people get past similar situations that you've done? Is that kind of what motivated you, I guess I could say?
Well, let's say if you had told me 4 years ago that I would do trauma healing or write a book about trauma healing, I would have laughed. I did not expect this. I did not see this coming. I guess it's something that I grew into, through my own healing journey.
Hmm.
I learned so much about trauma. I learned so much about what it really is and what it isn't. And by observing myself, I really learned a lot what it means to be traumatized and what we have to do to let it go. And so one thing came to another, and I felt so comfortable with the subject. I mean, I can talk about trauma and what it means to let it go for hours. This is like,
Hmm.
it sounds strange, but helping people heal from trauma makes me insanely happy. It's a paradox in a way, but
Sure.
I don't know how else to explain. It just makes sense to me. Just like for some people, math and science just makes sense.
Sure.
Well,
Uh-huh.
math never made sense to me, but trauma makes sense. So you can talk to me about something, I can tell you exactly what is wrong, what we need to work on to release that.
Hmm.
So,
So to heal, like I'm just going to throw a hypothetical out there. Maybe
mhm,
somebody had a very traumatic childhood. Maybe they weren't physically, or sexually abused, but maybe just general. Maybe the mom and dad didn't really pay attention to that child, or maybe they were just constantly putting that child down,
mhm,
calling them, really, you know, terrible names you would tell a child, you idiot or whatever. Okay, now that person, he or she is now an adult, and they're carrying that baggage, and maybe they've carried it for years. So how would you say, how would the healing start for a person like that? That's just, maybe they feel worthless now because of their upbringing.
yeah, they would feel worthless and being immensely triggered every time they feel less than adequate. Every time someone says something that really makes them go back to the childhood. So, trauma is an inside job.
Hmm.
So, on my journey, what I learned, what really helped me the most was reflecting on how I was behaving. For me, it was in relationships. At some point, I realized I was sabotaging every relationship I was in, always the
Hmm.
same pattern. And so I started to look at myself and started to look at how I behaved, what I was doing, and I noticed the pattern. And so then I could reflect back and say, okay, why am I doing this? And this is really
Absolutely.
what this internal dialogue. So many people are afraid of really looking at themselves because they're afraid of what they're going to find. But really, everything that we find is only things that need to be healed, things that need our attention, things that need our love and our compassion. Because everything, all the trauma we're holding on to is a part of ourselves that just wants to be heard. It just wants to be
Absolutely.
seen, but we keep pushing it down because we do not want to deal with it. We don't want to feel negative. We don't want to cry. We don't want to feel bad. But honestly, the negative emotions are the most important parts we have to look at because the negative emotions tell us what we need to work on. When we're happy, we're happy. There's
Hmm.
nothing to look at, we're just happy. But the thing is, when you suppress your negative emotions, you cannot genuinely be happy
That's true.
because you
I
can't
agree with
suppress
that.
the bad without suppressing the good. I can tell you, I am so happy sometimes that I just jump around. Really, is
Nothing
pure,
wrong with that.
pure joy. I couldn't do that for years. I was hiding my emotions because whenever I was trying to feel happy, I felt the sadness trickle up. But now there's
Hmm.
no sadness left. So I can fully be happy, and everybody can do that. They just have to allow themselves to feel however they feel and see what needs healing. And that's really the secret to trauma healing.
I agree with that. In fact, on a personal note, years and years ago, I knew a couple, boyfriend and girlfriend, and we didn't know it at the time until after they had broken up. But here's the sad part. Maybe you've heard stories like this before. We found out after the fact that he was physically abusive to her.
Mm,
And when she was asked about that, why'd you stay with him for so long? Uh, she actually turned around, made it look like it was her fault, like caused him to treat me like that. It's
mm,
like he had her so down, I guess you could say,
yeah.
that she felt like, well, I deserved it. I caused him to do it. If I'd acted better and, been his, hate to say, slave or servant, then, let him walk all over me,
Mhm.
then, and I couldn't believe that. Have you ever seen people turn things around like, well, I
Yeah.
deserve it. I'm not worth anything. Have you seen that yourself?
Yes, I have
Oh,
many
wow.
times.
Hmm.
But all of this can be healed. And that's the only thing that matters.
Wow.
Unfortunately, there are so many relationships like this, but those narcissistic relationships, what we have to understand is narcissists are created. They're not born. So whatever happened to him made him who he was.
I
It's not an
see.
excuse, but that's how it happens. This was his way of keeping control,
I see.
of feeling being in control, because he probably as a child never was. Who knows, maybe one of his parents or both were abusing him in this way. And this is the only way he knew, the only way he knew to be in control is maybe he was punishing his mother all over again.
Like the cycle we keep hearing about. It's the cycle.
Exactly.
Oh,
So we
wow.
don't know, as long as we don't know the story, there is no definitive way to say what happened, why he turned out like this, but there's
Wow.
always a reason.
We've talked about trauma now, Sandra, but let's kind of talk to the next step now.
Mhm.
Okay. So let's talk about trauma healing. Somebody wants to take the first step that says, you know what? I'm not going to let my bad childhood bother me anymore. I'm not going to let that bitter divorce get me anymore. I'm not going to let what somebody said to me long time ago or what they did to me, bother me anymore. I'm going to release that. So let's talk about the trauma healing. Let's kind of a
Mhm.
little bit more. We touched on it a little bit. So what would you call trauma healing or the steps to it?
Well, to me, healing trauma is, or it can be, a beautiful journey of transformation. Because really, by releasing everything that you held on to for so many years, you're giving room for beautiful things to come in, new memories.
Mm-hmm.
You're really discovering who you truly are because you're just buried underneath. That's why my book is called Journey to Yourself, because really that's what it is. The more you release, the more you, thank you, the more you
Yeah,
come back to who you truly are. Most people don't know who they are. But when you heal, you bring this up to the light. So trauma
absolutely.
healing is a process. There is no one size fits all approach. For some people, counseling and therapy is all they need, and that's perfect. But most people need something else. So, and there's so many amazing trauma healing modalities out there. For example, I use traumatic incident reduction. No written law how we have to heal from trauma because we're all different. Our journeys are
Absolutely.
different, our stories are different.
Everybody has their own life story.
Exactly.
Everybody's had their own thing this thing that's traumatized them, that's happened to them.
Yeah.
You know, it may not bother this person here, but the same thing happened to this person, and they're just 100 feet in the air. They're just traumatized.
Exactly.
You taught yourself a coach. So kind of tell us more about your coaching. How do you coach someone that desires to heal, that wants to put the past behind them for sure?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what I do is intuitive coaching.
Uh-huh.
Basically, what this means is of course, as a coach, I always ask questions,
Mm-hmm.
but let's say I'm very direct. I don't sugarcoat things. So when I have a question, I make sure it is a question that will trigger a response. And this is so that people really think about it and have to look at the whole issue.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, find their own aha moment. So, really, what I help people I work with do is find the light bulb that goes off. And this light bulb is for most all that they need to release an issue. Let's say
Sure.
limiting beliefs. For example, I'm not good enough. I'm a failure. I don't amount to anything,
Self-doubts.
Exactly. All those little voices in your head.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They
That's
talk a
all
lot.
trauma. Yeah, that's all trauma. It's all based on trauma, even though we don't realize that. But just asking the right questions, they come to that aha moment that tells them, okay, wow, I don't need this anymore. And they just release it. And the next week they come back and say, you know what? I went to my boss and I asked him for the raise and I got it. I feel so amazing. Just from working through the limiting belief and
Yep.
letting it go. It's not rocket science.
Yeah.
And I just love it. I was really considering studying being a therapist or a social worker,
Uh-huh.
but I was like, no, if I do this, I have to follow the book.
Yep.
And
They
I
got these
cannot
rules you got to go by.
exactly, I cannot
Yep.
do what I do if I have to follow a book. So I said, nope, I'm going to go and become a certified coach because then I have the freedom to really help my clients in a way that I know will help them best.
And of course, be able to write your own book.
Yes. Well, that was part of the process, I guess.
Yeah. But from my own experience, I had someone tell me many years ago, and I'm sure you've heard this, and maybe this is advice you've given. Maybe I'll tell my audience now. If you're replaying something in your mind, either somebody said something to you terrible to you that hurt your feelings, or somebody did something to you that was just horrible, or something in your life that just, if you replay that moment over and over and over, are you hurting that other person, or are
No,
you hurting yourself?
you're hurting
So,
yourself.
the other person would probably be laughing, knowing you're holding on to that, and they're still torturing you, even though they're not even in your life anymore. So, I'm not a coach, Sandra, but I'm up if you'll agree. But I'll say let it go because they're not worth it. They're not worth you robbing your happiness. Am I correct saying that?
Correct. I saw a very good worded meme one time on Facebook, and it
Mm-hmm.
said, when you're holding on to anger, you're drinking the poison, hoping the other person to die. So, really, when you're angry, you are basically punishing yourself because, for example, let's say someone said something that you were not, fast enough to really reply in a cocky way,
You
or
couldn't think
stand up.
fast enough. Yeah.
Yes, or stand up for yourself. So, then you're basically the anger is only eating away at you. That other person may not even think about it anymore
Yeah.
because for them
Mm-hmm.
it was nothing. But because something happened years before, that situation triggered you and it triggered a memory, for example. And so you play this over and over again. And next time someone says or does something similar, maybe they don't even mean anything by it, but you're so triggered you just explode.
Just mad. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, because of
Yeah.
what happened, that trigger, because you haven't released that. But you're holding on to this, not the other person.
Absolutely. One thing I'd like to talk about too, that you talked this on your website. As a matter of fact, let me bring up your website
Mhm.
right now for our audience here, and I'll display that. Let's see. Yeah, there's your website, ladies and gentlemen, right there. If you can't see that, that's Rise Above Your Story. To me, that's positive in itself. riseaboveyourstory.com. That's Sandra's website there. So, Sandra, tell me a little bit about your website. What happens when people click on that? What do they see?
Well, the first thing they see is a big picture of me.
Okay, nothing wrong with that.
No, not really.
There you
And
go. Good picture. That's a really good photo,
thank
by the
you.
way.
Yeah, my photographer did a really good job. I really
Really
love it.
did. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, on my website, you can see different things, how I work with people. I know I have a lot of text in there. I apologize, but I'm a writer. I can't help it.
Sure. Nothing wrong with that. Hey, the more the merrier is what I say.
Exactly. So you can scroll through, you see how you could order my books, you could go to my blog, you can go to my shop, you can see inspirational quotes that I sometimes just, I don't know, make up.
Sure.
And yeah, you can see where I've been published in Thrive Global Magazine and others as a writer. And you can also book a free 30-minute session with me. If you really feel drawn to working with me, getting to know me more, or just have questions, it's a total free session, and we'll see
Now, let me
where we
ask you. Now, of course, YouTube. Now we go all over the world. So, if somebody wants a session with you,
go. Mhm.
do they have to be in the same city that you are? Or how would they do that if they want to reach out to you?
Well, I hold all my sessions over Zoom.
Zoom. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And I have been for the past 2 years because there was
Okay.
no other way. And it's really a nice way to hold sessions because, first of all, I can reach more people than just where I live.
Sure.
And it's also a safe place because my clients don't have to drive to me and then drive back, mulling the whole session over in their head. No, they can just turn off the computer, get a cup of tea, and relax in their own home.
Oh, that's nice. Just
It's
very
much,
relaxed. Yes.
yes, it
Uh-huh.
is. And when it comes to, I mean, trauma healing is not easy because we really have to reflect if we really want to release it. And so being in a place that we feel safe in is very helpful.
Sure. Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. We got a comment, a nice comment from our live audience watching. I'd like to share this with you,
Sure.
Sandra. Kathleen wrote, "We have to forgive the people that hurt us and move forward with our lives."
That's very true. Very true. Thank you, Kathleen. Yes, forgiveness is very important. But the thing is, most people misunderstand forgiveness when it comes to trauma.
Mm-hmm.
It is not so much about forgiving the people, but forgiving ourselves, allowing ourselves to let it go. Because in essence, we are the one who are holding ourselves hostage. We are not
Yes,
allowing ourselves to let the trauma go.
I agree. Mm-hmm.
So, and in that, we keep on being angry at the people who traumatize us. And why wouldn't we? I mean, I was raped. I was sexually assaulted multiple times. Of course, I'm
Mm-hmm.
angry, but I was angry, let's put it this way. But at some point, I had to come to terms with that and say, okay, they don't even think about me anymore.
Yeah.
But I am still thinking of them. So I am keeping myself stuck in this. So it's not so much about forgiving the other person, in a way, yes, but really allowing ourselves to let it go.
And that's such a
Yeah,
hard thing to do sometimes.
it
That is,
is.
I'm speaking from personal experience. It's just hard to just finally say, but there's been a time in my life I'm like, you know what? That is robbing me of my happiness. I can't think clearly, either in my personal relationships, my family, my job. Do I really want that eating at me? So,
Exactly. And it's really anyone who traumatized us, all they should be is like the little speck of dust that floats in the sunlight.
mhm,
That's
absolutely.
as much attention they should get from us, but we have to get to that point.
We do.
And when we
Absolutely.
get to that point, we fully release them. In a way, this is forgiveness. But we have to choose to allow ourselves to let go and forgive.
Okay. Absolutely. I agree with you 100, 1000%. There's another interesting tidbit I'd like to kind of touch on that you've
Mhm.
kind of touched on yourself. We've talked about trauma and we've
Mhm.
talked about trauma healing, but there's something else called inherited trauma. I've never heard that term before. How do you inherit trauma, and what is inherited trauma for the audience?
Okay, let me tell you a story.
Okay.
Now, I want you to imagine a dairy farmer about 5 generations back.
Okay.
So, what would that be? 1940s?
At
Something
least
like that?
30s, somewhere along in there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
around that time. Very successful, has beautiful children, a loving wife, and
Mm-hmm.
life is good. Then his wife suddenly dies,
Mm.
and he is so struck with grief, he starts to drink and he starts to gamble. And one night, as he was gambling, was really drunk, he played away his whole estate with a deck of cards.
Oh no. Gambled it away.
Gambled it away. Yes. So, which means he lost his home. He lost something to inherit his children. He lost his livelihood. He lost everything with
Mm-hmm.
one deck of cards. Now, just imagine the next morning when he wakes up, sober or partly sober, and realizes what he has done. Out of grief, he played everything away. This is not only the grief for his wife, this is now he's punishing himself for being so
Oh,
weak. And then think about his children. All of a sudden, they have no home. They don't know where the next food is coming from because the father doesn't have a job.
wow.
So they
Yeah.
lose everything. Maybe they were already learning the trade so they could take over the dairy farm one day. And now all of this is gone and they have no idea what's going to happen next. Now they start to blame their father for being so weak. And the father is blaming himself. So the father is completely grief stricken and he's being traumatized from what he has done. Now, his kids are the next generation.
Mm-hmm.
And they then now have to figure out what they're going to do with their lives. And they may get married, may have their own children, and with their own trauma, they may teach their children, well, life is hard. Keep your head down. Don't try to do anything for yourself. You're going to lose it anyways. Having your own business is
Mm-hmm.
too much work because you can lose it just like that, and then you
Yeah.
have nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what their children grow up with. So they're growing up with, well, keep your head down. Don't look up. Just work. Make sure you always have enough money so you don't have to worry, and everything else doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Then on top of that, the war comes, and they have to live through the war and they have
Oh
really
yeah.
nothing and have to live
Wow.
with that, this trauma on top of that. Now their
Mm.
children grow up post-war, hopefully.
Yeah.
And not only do they have the trauma from the grandparents who lost their dairy farm, but now from the parents and the war and the lack of having things. And this continues on.
It's a vicious cycle that we keep hearing about.
Exactly. And that dairy farmer is my ancestor. So in my family
Really?
line, I'm since then the first one who has published a book, the first one who actually has her own business. Because I decided I'm going to break the cycle because no one else before me could.
Wow.
That's how we start to inherit trauma. Now, this was just 5 generations ago. I've worked
Mm-hmm.
with people where we found a family curse that was 500 generations ago. No, 500 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that
Wow.
was actually a story, it would sound like out of a romance novel, but that actually happened. It was, we went back basically. Well, this goes into the realm of spirituality. I don't know how much you want to spread out. I think this would be maybe a little too far for this interview, total different subject.
Whatever we want to talk about, yeah, we're fine here. So,
Okay. All right. So,
hence the name variety. This is a variety show. So,
true. All right. So let's say we figured out that there was a curse whenever there was 3 sisters born in the
mhm.
family. And it started 500 years ago when 3 sisters were born in her family line. And they all were roughly about maybe 1 or 2 years difference in age. They were all in marrying age and wanted a husband. And one day a stranger came to town and was looking for a wife. Now he saw the three sisters and was totally smitten because they were all beautiful. And he decided that he's going to take the strongest one as his wife because the strongest one will bear him the strongest children.
Sure.
And
Absolutely.
sons, of course. And so, yeah, so he decided to play them out against each other. He's going to court all of them and without them knowing, and then them finding out, and whoever was the strongest was going to be his wife. Now, one of the sisters turned out to be a narcissist because she was the strongest and she was the one that said, nope, he's going to be mine. Now, the second one completely retreated, like quiet, didn't have anything to say anymore.
Withdrew.
Yeah, withdrew. Yes.
Oh, wow.
And the third one was pushed out of the family.
Oh, wow.
So, and we came up on that because my client had the same thing happen with her and her two sisters. One became a narcissist, one completely retracted, and she was pushed out of the family. The same was with her mother and the two sisters. Exactly the same.
Same way. Wow.
Exactly. So when we look about inherited trauma, we have to look at patterns. Something that happens in our life or something extremely similar happened in
a previous generation or previous life, should
exactly.
I say?
I mean, we can only go back
Interesting.
so far, but it just continues, and it's turned basically into a curse because it was never healed.
Wow, so that's very interesting. Yeah,
it's
like deja vu almost in a way.
It is, and healing ancestral trauma is so powerful because not only do you say this stops with me, so that future generations, your children, don't have to go through this again, but you also heal everything backwards until the very source. I mean, this is all on the energetic level, of course, but it really completely releases it when we just choose and say, no, I'm not going to do this. I mean, I know that in my family, generations back, women were always abused.
Oh, wow.
In one way or another. But I'm the only one who said, I've had enough, I'm going to heal this.
You broke that chain,
Yeah, before I knew about ancestral trauma.
That's good.
But my son will never have to go through what I've been through because I healed this within me.
Absolutely.
So he doesn't have to, and his children won't have to.
So you kind of like say you broken the cycle, at least in your branch of the family tree. So that's even perfect.
Exactly.
I've got another comment here. I want to see what your opinion is this. Let me show this. We're talking about trauma here in an earlier conversation. Gary wrote, some people completely put it out of their minds and never remember what caused a trauma. So have you ever run across that where someone's traumatized, but they can't really pinpoint what it was? Have you seen that?
Yes, many times. It's completely suppressed. And people can live with this for the rest of their lives, but deep down, they always know something is there. And the danger with this is that something can trigger them and it all comes back to the surface.
Oh, well, they will remember what it was.
Some may only remember emotions, but not images. Because they're compartmentalized and they're completely suppressing it. The mind is not allowing it to come back up because it was too traumatizing. Yes, this can happen too.
It's very common. Yeah.
Sadly, it is.
Maybe someone just, your mind buried it but yet it's just, a trigger word, or a trigger situation,
Right. I mean, it doesn't have to happen, but it can. And then it can be devastating because once the door is open, everything is coming back because it's still there. It's not like it's gone. It's still there. It's just suppressed. Door is closed and it's okay. But there's always this little tingly feeling like there is something that's always there.
Absolutely. Okay. Gary, I hope that answers your question there, your comment there. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because some people may not know. It could be something so minute, that you wouldn't know, but it can, like I said, it's like the balloon. You put too much air in it, it's going to explode eventually. So exactly. I was accused of that many years ago. I think I've matured since then, but I hope so. One thing I thought was interesting when I read on your website, Sandra, you talked about, and we're all guilty of this, at least I am, home clutter, clutter and antiques and having dust. And what you basically said was change your house to a sanctuary. So, can you kind
Mhm.
of tell us more about changing our homes to a sanctuary?
Yes. Well, I when I work with people releasing their trauma, I look at every aspect of their lives.
Hmm.
And our homes play such a huge role. It again goes into more of the energy of things. So, for example, when we have clutter, when we have a mess, we can't really think straight, think clearly. The air feels heavy in the
Hmm.
home. The same is with dust. Dust, for example, it holds skin, hair, it
Hmm.
holds, fabric, and if you have pets, then it's animal hair and a little bit of dirt and some little critters.
Yep.
But all of this is like what we shed from our body is still attached to the energy. So, and when we don't dust regularly, then it may feel heavy in the home. And when it feels heavy in the home, we sit on the couch and we feel like, ugh, I don't want to do anything today. I feel blah. And you don't know why. But it's the energy of the home because as soon as you're out of the home, you feel energetic, you feel great, you want to do things. But you go back into the home and you're just like sitting on the couch and being a slump.
Hmm.
That's the energy of the home. So decluttering is very helpful, passing things on that we don't need anymore, like clothing we can donate or sell. You know, I don't know how many toys I sold from my son because he just outgrew all of the baby toys. And I held on to them for as long as I could, but at some point I say, well, I have to get rid of them now. I mean, he's 8.
They're right.
He doesn't
Sure.
need Barney anymore. But yeah, and it's the same with gifts. When we receive gifts, we feel, well, most of us feel obligated to keep them because we're taught you never give away a gift because someone really thought about it,
Hmm.
which is true. But then it's something you don't need at all. And so it sits on a shelf and then you move it into the back of the cupboard. And at some point, you start to resent this gift because it's in the way, So it is okay to release gifts, to give them to someone else, to pass them on because
Hmm.
maybe
Absolutely.
we received them because we are the connection between the person who gave it to us and the person who could really use this.
Uh,
So holding on to gifts is that we don't need or that we don't resonate with is not very helpful. And it's really just our fear of upsetting the other person. Now, let's say it was a picture frame and you have this picture frame out, and years later, the person comes by, oh, what a beautiful picture frame. And you say, yeah, I got that from you. And they would say, really? I don't remember.
they don't remember you.
But we're still holding on to because we were taught that we should. We feel obligated because it was a gift. But
We don't want to hurt their feelings.
exactly. So we're just afraid of what other people may think. So we make it about other people, not about ourselves.
Well, let me ask you this then. Talking about clutter and having things in the house, do you think that some people, maybe they've had some kind of trauma in their life, whether childhood, young adult, whatever, that they get clutter like hoard? Is that a part of the trauma then
Yeah.
sometimes? Or can it be?
Yeah, a lot of times from my own experience, it was more older people who really hoard. And me growing up in Germany, my aunt, she is not a hoarder, but she keeps things. Oh, this is an amazing box. I'm going to keep this box because someday I'm going to use it. Well, I know,
Someday, the
yeah, I know
someday.
the pot has a hole, but hey, I can still use it as a flower pot in the garden. Things like that, because during the war and after the war, he didn't have much. So you kept
Sure.
everything and reused it until it was really breaking apart.
Hmm.
So and this is what she still does, and many older people do. They just continue using it or keeping it just in case because you may use it for something. So they can't let it go because they're conditioned to keeping it, which is very good because we should reuse our things, but not keep even more, not being able to let anything go. So, yeah, hoarding is a form of trauma, it's a form of not wanting to let go, it's a form of fear of losing things. of
Or
not
trying
having
to
enough.
recapture the past, maybe, or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's different for everybody, but this is a very common phenomenon with people who grew up in a time of lack when they didn't have much and really had to reuse everything until it really
Sure,
fell apart. Like clothing being handed down, from older sister to younger sister, and so on and so forth, until you could only make rags out of it and use them as rags in the kitchen. Things like
sure.
that,
Just recycle everything, basically.
Exactly, which is a good thing. But now we're in a society where you just buy things when you need them, but they
Absolutely.
still keep it. And that's the issue, that they have like three crock pots just because one is better than the other. And I could use this for that, and I could use this one for that. And the pot
Hmm.
roast doesn't fit in this one, so I need another one. And, before you know it, you have like so many things, like three or four of them.
It just keeps adding up for
Yeah.
sure.
But everything comes back to trauma. And we didn't even realize that it is trauma that's coming back to.
One thing that I thought was very, very encouraging on your website, if you could kind of share that with our audience here, you called it the 3 pillars of divine transformation. Can you kind of tell us a bit more about that? I thought that was
Sure.
a very positive thing.
Sure. Well, trauma healing in itself is transformation because we're transforming from the traumatized mind to being fully ourselves, standing in our power and knowing
Hmm.
exactly who we are. And the 3 pillars for me are release the trauma, reconnect with yourself, and realign with your life purpose, with your hopes and dreams, with yourself. So release, reconnect, and realign. That's divine transformation. That's the journey. You go from being traumatized to healing and figuring out who you actually are, what your life purpose is, or whatever else you are trying to find.
Absolutely. Yeah, I could probably remember that more myself. So yeah, I'm glad you shared that on your website. Okay, let's talk a little bit more. I'm going to go back to your book again. Let me display that again. In fact, I kind of like this picture here, so I'll let you kind of tell my audience about that. I really do like this one. So here it is, ladies and gentlemen. Okay.
Yes, well, this is in my front yard.
I think it's great.
Yes, as a very spiritual person, I love Buddhas. I love the serenity they portray. It feels so calming, so relaxed, so happy. I mean, this is
Absolutely.
happy Buddha. And I thought it was very fitting to put my book in front of it because my book is all about healing and finding your happiness.
I agree. I agree with that. Yeah, to me, it kind of goes together, you know. So let me put your book back up again. Again, this is called Journey to Yourself: How to Heal from Trauma, written by someone who did. So if someone watching the show, Sandra, whether they're watching live or watching later, another early in the later recording, how would they get this book? What would be the best way for them to? What would you tell them?
Well, the best way would be on Amazon or Barnes and Noble.
Okay.
And if you would like a signed copy, go to my website. You can order the book there, and I'll send you one personally, signed by me.
Wow. I'm looking forward to it because a lot of people have written books like this, but for someone like you that has went through, I mean, multiple traumas, to me that would make the book a must read in itself. So for those of us that have other issues, and
Mhm.
so okay, yeah, so Journey to Yourself: How to Heal from Trauma. I mean, that to me that's a very appropriate title. And now, is this the only book you're writing? Or are you writing other books other than this one, or do you plan to?
Well, Journey to Yourself, How to Heal from Trauma is book one of a trilogy. So
Okay.
the trilogy is Journey to Yourself, and I'm working on a second book right now. And the second book is called How to Unbecome Who You Were Taught to Be. So that's where all
Oh,
the
that's
limiting
interesting.
beliefs come in play, what our parents taught us and what we took on, those self doubts, those little voices in our head, how we release that, how we find our own strength and courage and continue on the journey to ourselves. That's what I'm working on right now.
Is this, like you said, it's a trilogy? Did you say it
Yeah.
was a trilogy? It is. Okay. Wow. We're looking forward to it. Wow, that sounds very, very interesting.
Thank you.
Um, so coaching, like I say, you people can get on your website and they can have, consult with you,
Hmm.
I can have a consultation. Um, in particular time, like is it Monday through Friday most of the time, or do you have a
Well, I
specific
have
time?
my times spread out morning, afternoon, and evening
Okay.
because I'm in the Eastern time zone, but not everybody is in my time zone. So I have like different times available, and whatever works, we'll figure it out. And if there's no time available for someone who can't make it, then they can just contact me and we'll figure it out.
Do you do mostly? I guess it goes without saying. You do mostly one on one. I mean, is there any kind of group therapy? It's just pretty much a one on one type situation.
Well, generally, it is a one on one. I do have couples programs
Oh,
where I
do
work
okay,
with couples. So basically,
okay.
help them individually release the trauma because that is a one on one. But I do coaching together where I basically teach them how to communicate with each other in an empowering way, how to understand when their partner is being triggered, and how to help them through.
I
Because
see.
it's really not this difficult. So many relationships could be saved if we knew how to communicate, how to understand the telltale signs when someone is being triggered and it's not us. Because when we have like an argument, we're bickering about the same things over and over again. We
Yeah.
think it's us that we're doing this to our partner, but it's not. It's something from the past that keeps coming up, and we can help our partner through this. And it's really easy. And this is amazing because it really changes the whole dynamic of the relationship. You can
So
change any argument into an empowering discussion if you know how.
yeah.
It's not hard, and it's I see this with my husband. Now, my husband is, well, when it comes to spirituality, the exact opposite from me, like leave me alone with it. But just by doing what I do with changing the way I react, so I basically observed myself whenever I was triggered by my husband. Once I
Mhm.
understood I was being triggered, I started to look at myself and I started to understand why I was being triggered. And that helped me understand it wasn't my husband who triggered me, it was something else.
A life experience or something that
Exactly.
you.
Yeah, exactly. A past experience or something that I completely have forgotten from childhood
Hmm.
that made me feel like just insignificant. And the more I did that, the more our conversations changed because I became more compassionate towards his past, and
Empathetic,
more,
basically.
yeah, more understanding. And it happens a lot that when I have a trigger, I still get triggered every once in a while for the odd reason.
Like,
And
me
then
too, right here.
I just sit there and I just cry for like half an hour. I just cry and I don't even
Hmm.
have emotions. It's just
Hmm.
I'm just releasing whatever was there. And my husband always comes, "Are you okay?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm just releasing. Leave me alone." He was like, "Okay," and he goes, and
Let it
it's fine.
go. Yeah.
Exactly. Or or he feels that I want to talk about it, and then I talk about what I realized, what came up, and he just sits there and listens.
Well, that's good. I'm glad to
Yes.
hear that you do relationship because unfortunately, a lot of relationships are
Yes.
tug of war. Everybody wants their own
Exactly.
way. There's no giving, and so unfortunately, a lot of it breaks. So I'm glad
Mhm.
to hear you're doing that as well because I mean, a lot of people do have
Yeah.
relationship problems. So and you know, coaching them kind of through that is really helpful.
Yes. And I really enjoy this work. I mean, it's it just makes me happy, and to see that I can help other people be happy too, because so many relationships they don't have to break apart.
Hmm.
It's just because there's like trauma that hasn't been resolved, and they don't realize that this is what's happening. And just by changing the way they see things, giving them like little nuggets on how to communicate when there's an argument, how to
Sure.
diffuse it, how to stop, how to just take a deep breath and just say, okay, let's walk away,
Yep.
give ourselves time to relax, to calm down, and then we talk about this like adults,
Yeah.
adults who know what they do.
Right.
So,
Absolutely.
because when you're being triggered, it's like you're all emotion, you're just feeling, but you don't know what you're feeling because there's too much going on. And understanding and knowing how you can sort through that
Hmm.
makes this so easy, because then you know exactly what to do. You are back in control because you know, okay, I'm being triggered right now. Why? Because you're
Mm-hmm.
taking back control and you say, okay, these are my emotions. My emotions don't control me. So let's figure this out. Why do I feel like this? And by trying to figure this out, you're releasing that. This is
And
why I offer this free 3-video series of trigger release, how to release triggers, because it's very simple.
absolutely. I know that I personally need it. And I'm probably, there's so many people that, that could use that, that great
Mm,
advice as well. And Sandra, I really appreciate what you're doing, because there's so many people that, have dealt with trauma, and it could be anything could go under that umbrella
yeah.
that just stays with somebody. So again, I mean, your work is very much appreciated, and hope people take advantage of your website and get in touch with you. Most importantly, though, I'm going to bring your book up again. I think that's very, very important. Ladies and gentlemen, her book is called Journey to Yourself: How to Heal from Trauma, and written by someone who did. And if you haven't heard, if you're just now tuning in at the beginning of this program, Sandra spoke about the trauma that she went through. And so, coming from someone who went through such a traumatic experiences, and that's experiences plural, this book has got to be a must read for anybody else, such as myself, that has things that just still kind of eat at us for a little bit. So, again, thanks for writing the book, Sandra. And I myself look forward to reading it myself.
Thank you. Well, let me know how you like it.
Sure will. Well, Sandra, that's all the questions that I have. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to speak to me and my audience tonight. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you've missed the live show, these shows are archived. So, if you're watching an earlier recording of this, you can always leave comments for later, and I will make sure that those get forwarded to Sandra immediately. So, I don't think you've missed out just because you missed the live show. These will stay on, and you can still order her book and still go to her website for your consultation if you so choose. So,
Right.
okay. Well, Sandra, I appreciate you being on the Van Buren Variety Show, and I wish you the best of luck, and I hope we can talk to you again soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Good night.
Night.
And ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for tonight's episode of the Van Buren Variety Show. I hope you all learned something. I certainly did, because to reiterate, we've all had bad things happen to us, some more bad than others. And so it depends on how you deal with it. So I highly recommend you buy Sandra's book and at least get on her website. And that way she can give you the consultation to kind of give you the first steps towards healing, where you can get rid of those voices and that bad experience forever. So I know for one, I'll probably take advantage of that myself. So that's all I have for tonight. Just a reminder, this show is broadcast live once a week, where I have an individual guest talking about different subject. It could be a profession, might be a hobby, it might be a how-to segment, might be some entertainment coming up. So hence the word variety. So if you like variety, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And if you liked tonight's episode, make sure you hit the like button as well. So subscribe and like this video. And hopefully you can tell your friends and family about it as well. So that's all for tonight. I am Bob Van Buren for the Van Buren Variety Show. Have a great week, everybody. Good night.